Hello, I'm Lisa Johnson from Webster University. I would like to tell you about the journey of one family of German refugees. In the last months before the beginning of the Second World War and mass murder began, about 16,000 Jews fled Nazi persecution in the new Greater Germany and crossed the globe. Stripped of their citizenship, homes, jobs, and property, the Jews threw their lives in suitcases and headed east. Thus begins Steve Hochstadt's 2012 book, Exodus to Shanghai. It is 1939 after Kristallnacht, and Jews have to leave Germany. Their time was up. In the late 1930s, thousands were forced out of their German homes because of the Nazi government. Most of these refugees were Jews. Anyone who was outside the desired racially pure German was no longer welcome in Germany. Being called a Jew was used for all sorts of undesirables. The antagonism against Jews went well beyond religious grounds and was based on a flawed perception of some citizens being racially inferior to Aryan Germans. Jewish citizens were excluded from the German national community by the infamous Nuremberg laws. One of these ordinary people caught up in this nightmare was Walter Berger. This is the story of an ordinary German man and his family who were forced to flee to a foreign land. This map shows Beuthen, lower right, in the context of Silesia, a part of the Greater Germany. German-speaking Poland and Czechoslovakia also belonged to Greater Germany. After the German invasion of Poland in 1939, Polish Silesia was annexed to the Nazis. The government required Jews to identify themselves in such a way that they were permanently separated from the rest of the German population. An August 1938 law required Jewish men and women with first names not of Gentile origin to add Israel or Sarah to their first names on their documents. All Jewish passports were reissued and were stamped with the distinctive red letter J. Walter Berger tried to apply for visas for his family, but visas were expensive, and some countries did not even offer them. He was harshly rejected by both Bolivia and Palestine, where he had sought desperate refuge. Eventually, he found a way to travel without a visa to Shanghai. Up until August 20th, 1939, no visas were required to enter Shanghai, a city of international trade. On the left, we see Walter's ship ticket for the trip in April, narrowly avoiding the border closure coming, which indeed came a mere 4 months later. He liquidated his remaining assets and received aid from a Jewish charitable organization to buy the ticket. The trip lasted a month. The ship traveled east from Italy to China, stopping en route in Sri Lanka at the tip of India. Walter's wife Elsa and their young daughter Gittel followed him on a similar ship a month later. Here we see the journey from Germany to Shanghai, embarkation in Italy, journey through the Mediterranean, Suez Canal, Sri Lanka, Hong Kong, and finally landing in Shanghai. Many Jewish refugees lived in this part of the city. Most families lived together in apartments in the crowded Jewish quarter. These weren't famous or rich people with names like Einstein or Rothschild. They were just ordinary Europeans driven from their homes. They ran for their lives to the last safe place on earth. The mail came from home to Shanghai. In a world before cell phones and social media, postcards and letters meant everything. Walter eagerly awaited each letter. Note that the mail came to Shanghai by train through Russia with a stamp via Siberia. This postcard is from Walter's brother Max Berger, still in Boyden. Max did not survive the war. It is believed that he died in a concentration camp. Here comes the St. Louis Holocaust Museum in Walter's story and how we get to know him. Walter carefully kept all the letters he received in Shanghai and carried them to the United States after the war. It is remarkable that the letters survived and that Walter preserved them so carefully. What a journey they have been on! Walter's family donated the letters to the museum after his death. There are 300 letters and documents in the Berger Burns collection in the St. Louis Holocaust Museum, named after Walter Berger and his daughter, Gittel Burns. I have been working as an intern with this collection at the museum for the last 4 years. My job is to try to translate the letters, all of which are in German. I look at them individually. First, who wrote this letter? When and where is it from? Is it possible to read only a part of it, or can you make out all of the text? Can we find out what they wrote about? There are many Germanic fonts used in the personal letters, which were all handwritten. A written alphabet was not standardized in Germany until after the Second World War. Various fonts are displayed here. Fraktur, Schutterlinschrift, and Kurrentschrift were popular in Walter's time, before and during the war. I generally go very slowly and create a modern German version of a letter, when I can read it. Note the penciled-in letters above the cursive text. Of course, I write on a copy and not on the original. This is a three-part process. You start by figuring out each letter, which is sometimes a painstaking process, or at best like solving a puzzle. Then you type in the text in modern German. Finally, you translate it into English. As these letters are being prepared for use by the museum, the process is substantial. One follows the same 3 steps for translating and then adds the letter information on a cover sheet. Here we see the heart of the process. You scan the original and save the modern language versions in German and English on the computer. Then everything is cataloged and preserved for historians and for future generations. After the war, Walter had the opportunity to come to America, first to San Francisco and then on to St. Louis. It was just Walter and Gittel now. Unfortunately, Walter's wife Elsa died in a U.S. bombing raid in conflict with the Japanese in Shanghai toward the end of the war. In St. Louis, Walter had now to try to learn English and take courses for American citizenship at the International Institute. Gittel grew up, became a citizen herself, and started her own family. Gittel is interested in learning details of her family through the translations of her father's letters. Walter Berger shows us how important it is to do the next right thing every day to protect oneself and one's family. He knew instinctively how important it was to keep all communications and letters. We owe him a debt of gratitude for having such foresight and perseverance. In his later years in St. Louis, Walter loved watching Gittel flourish and enjoyed his grandchildren. He would be thrilled to learn about the newest member of his family, his great-great-grandson who shares his name and who was born this year. The beat goes on.